Piedmont was now a city. It was on January 26, 1907, registered voters in Piedmont voted to incorporate as a city and narrowly avoided annexation by Oakland. On January 31, 1907, the state of California made Piedmont an official municipality. The years ahead were challenging ones. The Founding Fathers were faced with issues of setting up and financing city government, administration, police, fire protection, water, schools, roads, and sewers. In 6 short years, Piedmont had a city hall, 2 schools, the Oakland Avenue Bridge, a Sunday school, and a commercial center. The Piedmont Interdenominational Church soon followed. Piedmont High School was built in 1922 and the Junior High and Wildwood schools in 1924. The Key System streetcar line expanded to bring public transportation to Piedmont residents. In the decades between 1907 and 1930, Piedmont experienced an explosive residential building boom. Piedmont's population soared from 1,719 residents in 1910 to 9,333 residents in 1930. Mowbray was the first public building in Piedmont's Civic Center. Originally planned as a Sunday school building, Mowbray Hall was built in 1908 on Vista Avenue across from today's City Hall. Prior to its construction, the first Board of Trustees, an early version of City Council, met in Piedmont Park, either in the cafe or in the Piedmont Development Company office adjacent to the entrance of Piedmont Park. After its dedication on February 15, 1909, Mowbray Hall became the meeting hall for the Board of Trustees. Mayor Hugh Craig, William K. Vickery, Henry D. Nichols, Harry Farr, and George W. McNear, Jr. were the Board of Trustees. Piedmont's Board of Trustees were writing new ordinances to begin the business of running a city. Residents wanted paved roads, an adequate sewer system, a better water supply, sidewalks, and police protection. Early city records reveal that the trustees passed more than 160 ordinances by the end of Hugh Craig's tenure as mayor in 1914, and over 330 ordinances by 1930. These early ordinances regulated street, sidewalk and sewer construction, police and fire departments, jail terms for those violating city ordinances, the discharge of firearms within the city, building permits and construction, fireworks, and concealed weapons, still timely today. Other ordinances dealt with situations more appropriate to the 1910s, the keeping of chickens and cattle, construction of barns and stables, and garbage wagon regulations. Horses were not to be tied to a shade or ornamental tree. Over 220 ordinances were passed by 1920 and over 330 ordinances by 1930. The city of Piedmont published its first financial report in 1909, covering the first 27 months of city government. The tax rate in 1909 was $2.30 per 100 valuation, lower than Oakland's. The report noted that the highest city expense was for road construction, followed by police and fire. From the beginning, architect Albert Farr figured prominently in the design of Piedmont's Civic Center. At 39 years of age, Albert Farr was in the prime of his profession, and his brother, Harry Farr, was one of Piedmont's trustees. Farr's first job for the city was to design a city hall, and on July 10, 1910, the Board of Trustees accepted Farr's plans for a combined city hall and fire department in a Spanish mission design. As it does now, Farr designed the city hall to house all of the municipal offices, the council chamber for the Board of Trustees, and the fire station, with garage for a fire engine truck, dormitories with showers and baths, a hose drying room, and a 60-foot steel bell tower. 6 fire alarm boxes throughout the city sent alarms to a central fire alarm system in the fire department. Plans also included a jail, picturesquely described as a guard room in which men, when they are unruly, can pass their spare hours in leisurely reflection. Farr included a well-kept lawn and ornamental shrubbery in the plans. At a time when many fire departments depended on horse-drawn fire wagons, the Piedmont Fire Department had a new $7,000 fire engine truck. It was powerful enough to climb Piedmont hills quickly and a great improvement over the bucket brigade of days of yore. Piedmont almost did not have its new fire engine. It was temporarily lost on its way from the factory to Piedmont. Finding a location for Farr's City Hall was one of the many major decisions facing the Board of Trustees. The trustees owned a lot on Vernal Avenue, now Highland Avenue, near Oakland Avenue, where they planned to build Piedmont's City Hall. A second site became available when Frank Havens offered to sell a lot on Vista Avenue across from the new Mowbray Hall. The trustees approved the design of City Hall in July of 1910, before the site of the building was decided on in September of 1910. As Albert Farr was drawing up the plans for Piedmont City Hall, he was also designing the new Oakland Avenue Bridge for the city. Designed in the Spanish Mission style, the bridge featured 8 pillars with light fixtures and 4 small shelters, all topped with mission tile roofs. The bridge replaced the original 1890 wood trestle over Linda Avenue and presented a magnificent entry to Piedmont. When it was built in 1910, the Oakland Avenue Bridge was the largest of the new reinforced concrete spans in the United States. Albert Farr was also called upon by the city to design Piedmont's first school, the Bonita Avenue School. Finding a way to finance this new city government and the construction of City Hall, the Oakland Avenue Bridge and Bonita Avenue School was not easy. Before Piedmont became a city, property owners paid a relatively low tax to the county. Evelyn Craig Patiani relates in her history, Queen of the Hills, how her father, Hugh Craig, struggled with the question of taxation. Finally, the trustees developed a new tax system that seemed fair and equitable to most Piedmont residents. Landowners were taxed on the amount of property they owned. Larger landowners like Isaac Requa, Frank Havens, and Hugh Craig, who owned acres of land, would pay higher taxes than residents with city-sized 50-foot lots. By 1915, the city was financially able to continue making improvements. The fire department added a second fire engine. The city made plans to acquire the land which would become Dracaena Park and Linda Playground, and 47 new lamps were added in the city. In 1916, Piedmont hired its first paid firemen, adding 7 firefighters to its 12 volunteers. Albert Farr designed a $7,000 addition to City Hall in 1917, enlarging the fire department with a second-story dormitory and additional garage space for the second fire engine. More revenue to the city coffers came from an unexpected source. Evelyn Craig Patiani relates that as automobiles became increasingly popular, many drivers from Piedmont and Oakland tested their new automobiles by speeding down the newly paved Highland Avenue at speeds of 60 miles per hour, Patiani notes. This created quite a safety hazard among the horses, carriages, and buggies on Highland. As the terrified horses stampeded, they dragged their drivers and carriages behind them. As a result, the Board of Trustees established a speed limit and fines for speeding on Highland Avenue. Speeding on Highland Avenue continued to be a problem and a source of revenue in the 1920s. Although Piedmonters enjoyed the uniqueness of living in a completely residential city, by 1912 they began to feel the need for a commercial center. The Oakland Tribune reported that Piedmont was known as the store-less city. In order to protect the city from what the newspaper called an invasion of cheap and unsightly stores, a group of residents, headed by Wallace Alexander, formed the Piedmont Commercial Association to buy land for a commercial block in Piedmont. Frank Havens owned 2 acres directly across from Piedmont Park, which he sold to Alexander and the Commercial Association. Alexander hired Albert Farr to design a center which Farr claimed would rival in tone and architecture the enormous mansions which are to surround it. Farr's design included a mission tile roof across the stores and elaborate ornamentation relief on the bank building. Piedmont's first commercial building was built in 1913. Piedmont had a grocery store. The first grocery store was run by Ainsworth and Palmer, but by 1921, Walter Hamby was running the grocery store that became the popular Hamby's Market. In 1916, W.L. Farrard opened the first drugstore, the Piedmont Drug Company. It later became Springman's Pharmacy. In 1921, J.H. Cheatham opened the Highland Sweet Shop with its candy store and soda fountain. Originally, this candy store was to have housed George Mara's candy shop before his untimely death in 1920. A service station was built in 1921, and a branch of the American Trust Bank was added in 1928. This commercial center was the first of many philanthropic deeds that Wallace Alexander would do for the city of Piedmont. He led the way in establishing the commercial center on Highland, the community church, and the Boy Scouts, and saving Piedmont Park from development. In 1907, Piedmont was on the eve of an explosive building boom. After the earthquake and fire in 1906, many San Franciscans fled to the East Bay and to Piedmont. Interestingly, the building boom was not as immediate as one might expect. The disaster in San Francisco that destroyed so many homes also destroyed businesses. Insurance companies had a difficult time paying out claims, and businesses suffered a slight depression. Piedmont did have its building boom a few years after the earthquake. The earliest building permits on file in City Hall reveal a mixture of bungalows and mansions, and where they were built in the years between 1908 and 1911. Larger homes were also built in these early years. In his 1913 brochure, Wickham Havens listed 32 millionaires living in Piedmont and claimed they made Piedmont per capita the wealthiest town of its size in California. Over time, this claim became Piedmont, a city of millionaires. The development of the streetcar lines propelled Piedmont's growth. As streetcar lines expanded throughout the city, they brought quick, affordable transportation into new areas, making these areas attractive as home sites. Home building quickly followed. Streetcar service expanded rapidly, and Piedmont soon had 3 electric streetcar lines. The number 10 streetcar line traveled through central Piedmont to Hampton and Crocker Avenues. The number 11 line ran up Oakland Avenue and through today's Linda Park to Piedmont Avenue. The number 12 car served Grand Avenue and traveled up Fairview to Jerome Avenue. In 1920, the city took 2 steps which it called the 2 most important events. Residents voted to establish a high school and to acquire Piedmont Park for school and park use. In the spring of 1921, William H. Weeks was hired as architect for the school, and construction began in July. When Piedmont High School opened in the fall of 1921, it offered both junior and senior high school courses of study. School officials expected 260 students. 325 students enrolled. Many of these students had formerly attended high school in Oakland. Enrollment swelled to 400 by the end of the first semester. In 1924, the Piedmont Junior High was built adjoining the high school. This new school building had 13 classrooms, a gymnasium with lockers, a print shop, and an auto shop. 7th, 8th, and 9th graders now attended Piedmont's new junior high school, relieving the crowding in the high school. Architects Albert Farr, Houghton Sawyer, and C.W. Dickey collaborated on the 1922 master plan for Piedmont's Civic Center. Robert Carney provided engineering services. Continuing Farr's Spanish Mission design in City Hall, the master plan called for an elaborate exedra at the entrance to Piedmont Park, a new community hall, additions to City Hall, municipal garages, and rerouting the streetcar line into an underground tunnel to a passenger station at the community hall. Here, passengers would enter or exit streetcars at an elegant plaza at park level with a fountain. Above the station, architects planned a European-style esplanade with gardens at street level. Originally, the community hall was designed as an elaborate 2-story building with a dome, but this design was scaled down to the present building. The master plan was approved by voters, with each structure to be approved individually by voters before construction. Voters approved the first units in 1924, which included $12,500 to build the Exedra and $12,500 to build a new community hall and remove the old Piedmont Park Cafe. It was the heaviest vote in the city's history to date. The new community hall was dedicated on April 3, 1925. Civic leaders and residents entered the newly landscaped Piedmont Park through the Exedra, which reporters compared to the Arch of Triumph. Guests admired Howard Gilkey's new landscape design, with its new rose garden behind the Exedra, extensive lawns and flowering shrubs along the path to the hall. Climate and views attracted the first residents to Piedmont. Civic leaders like Wallace Alexander developed schools, churches, streetcar lines, and civic organizations. Piedmont schools have always been valued, and the city's proximity to Oakland and San Francisco is an asset. Families built their homes here, attended church, commuted to work, and took pride in their city. This pride continues. Today, realtors delight in saying that Piedmont has one of the oldest housing stocks in the country. This is possible because Piedmont was completely surrounded by Oakland by 1909, and there was no more land to expand as other cities did. Much of Piedmont that we know today was built during these busy years prior to 1930. Some building did follow in the coming decades, but it was limited, as we will see later.